And we are live for episode 190 of Trek Live. How you doing this morning, Dan?
Doing great. Excited to wrap up some Deep Space Nine and talk some Star Trek.
Me too. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on your recently completed Deep Space Nine rewatch, but even more so, maybe you just rewatched pretty much all of Star Trek over the course of the last few years. So we got a lot to talk about in the coming weeks to kind of tie all that up, and this is sort of putting the bow on Deep Space Nine and Season 7 in particular, the way that we have with each season for this show at least. We're going to go through the episodes, right? And you're going to put your see it or skip it designation on each one. We'll talk about it as a whole a little bit. And you said put a bow on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, and we're not going to go, at least I don't think so, we're not going to go in chronological order or anything. I think we're just going to probably just jump around. I think that makes for the best discussions. And it should be fun.
Yeah, I like to do that. This season's definitely kind of a challenge on that front.
It'll be tough, yeah.
The Big Ten at the end. We might do it a little differently there and maybe talk about them collectively, but there's a lot of variety in the front half of the season, the front 2/3 of it maybe. And I like to try to find like little lumps of episodes together and talk about it that way instead of just going kind of down the list one by one. So we will definitely do that as we have with all the others, and definitely not going to do a full rewatch recap because that's kind of what this is from your perspective at least. Real quick, I'll share. I've watched a couple of episodes since the last time we did this from Deep Space Nine, the Siege of Ar558 and Covenant. From Voyager, I've watched Infinite Regress, I want to say. Nothing Human were the two. So 2 episodes of each. Pretty
nice.
Good group. Yeah?
Yeah.
Siege of Ar558 we'll talk about here today. Covenant we'll talk about here today, so no comment there. Really love Nothing Human. That's always been kind of an underrated favorite of mine. That would be a candidate for a maybe an undervalued Treks kind of a discussion down the road. So I'm not going to go too deep into that either because I think maybe that'll come down the road in its own episode. Yeah. Star Trek Insurrection coming up for me though very soon. I got 30 days for Voyager and then Insurrection. So yeah, mix in some TNG with my DS9 and Voyager in the next few days. So looking forward to that.
Cool.
So I think we should just get right into it. We're going to do like we usually do. Put the list of episodes up there on the board. And we'll put a see it or skip it label on each one as we kind of go through it. If you're following us on, watching us actively on YouTube, you're going to see this on your screen now. And that'll kind of be up there throughout most of the discussion. We'll take a tally at the end and see how we feel about the season as a whole. Real quick, though, just in case somehow, some way, maybe somebody's stumbling into this for the first time, how do you define what a see it or a skip it is in your own process here?
If it moves the story along, or if I think it's essential viewing. So it's not just a black and white, good or bad type of thing. There are some, even in this season, I'm going to mention some episodes that are see-its these episodes I do not like, but because Deep Space Nine is so serialized in episodes you might not think of see it episodes, there are some really pivotal things you need to watch. So that's what constitutes a see it or skip it.
Yeah, and with Deep Space Nine especially, I think this format, I would love down the road, maybe on the next rewatch, because we only kind of did this for you with Deep Space Nine. Some of the other shows that are more episodic, The Next Generation, Voyager, it maybe becomes it's a little bit of a different equation with this method. If you're trying to look at it through that lens. With Deep Space Nine, you fall into that trap of, such long-running character arcs and important pieces getting woven into these episodes that might not even be among your favorites, like you said, that you kind of feel not forced, but you kind of feel compelled to go with the see it on some episodes that maybe you wouldn't otherwise do. That equation might be a little bit different for a Voyager or a Next Generation or the original series, something like that. So, food for thought for the
Maybe next.
the long future down the road.
Yeah.
Who knows when?
Yeah.
But cool. I enjoy this. I really like that it's not just, like you said, a straight up and down vote. It's not just a thumbs up, thumbs down. You know, you're not doing what I do with putting letter grades on things and or stars or anything like that. This is a little bit of a different way to do this. And I can't wait to dive in, which I think we should do right now. We have Jimmy77 and Cyber Honey in the chat.
Welcome, guys.
Yep. Welcome to you both, as always. Curious to hear your thoughts on some of these episodes. If you disagree, or if you have or you want to validate a take on the episodes, we're very eager to hear and eager to engage on that front as we go forward.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, I don't like to go super chronological here, but I am going to start by asking you about this first clump of episodes, because I do think they're kind of tied together.
First three,
because they're so heavy in the introduction of Ezri. There's other stuff going on in some of these episodes too. They're all distinctive. They all have their own qualities. But I do think those first three can be kind of looked at as sort of a package deal to get Ezri off the ground and introduce her to the cast and integrate her into the show. So maybe one by one, go with Image in the Sand, Shadows and Symbols, and then After Image. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on those three.
They are all C-its for me. I think it's a pivotal run for Cisco and kind of teeing up some stuff at the end of the show.
Yeah.
It's I think there's just so much going on in those episodes. Like it's hard not to put C-it in those. And I know we're gonna have a topic on Ezri in the coming months, but
Definitely.
it feels a little bit rushed. But I think that aside, I think definitely pivotal episodes that you have to see. It's to this point, it's a balancing act with Cisco with the prophets and stuff like that. But this feels like he's really just taking a cannonball into the prophet stuff, and it's changing his whole backstory with his character and stuff. So it's a little run that I think is very necessary. So I would label it definitely see it all these episodes.
Yeah, I think it's hard to just in putting yourself in the shoes of, like, if you're trying to curate somebody's watch. If you didn't watch these three, I think you'd be kind of confused with some of the things that come later on between the Ezri developments and, like you said, the Cisco stuff is really adding colors to his backstory and things that are really going to pay off at the very end of the show. Do you have a favorite of the three? Do you like I said, some of these have pretty distinctive qualities. After Image is kind of Ezri deciding where she wants to be. If she wants to be on the station, she's working with Garrick
on the station.
They're on the station as a crew again, which kind of hadn't been the case for the first two. Working with Garrick on his claustrophobia and building on some of those things that have been built on or established in earlier episodes with Garrick. Shadows and Symbols is the sort of three-headed monster with three storylines. Yeah, with Cisco on the planet. They got some Kira and Odo stuff with blockading the Romulans and Worf.
I think Shadows and Symbols is my favorite, probably because I feel like everybody has something to do.
Yeah.
There's also an interesting twist. I know some people aren't happy with the orb and stuff, but I think there's some interesting callbacks in that one with around the orb and stuff like that. And so I think Shadows and Symbols is probably my favorite, just because, again, like you said, it gives the cast and the crew just a bunch to do, and there's some really good tension stuff between the Romulans and like Kira, and then Starfleet's there trying to maintain that relationship. So there's some good stuff, because I think to this point we see the turmoil happening on the the other side. But it's nice to see like on this side that there's some tough stuff going on between the allies. So
Yeah, that's a great
yeah,
point. That you see so much of the tension on the Dominion side of things with
Dominion
Kryptonians
side,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
Dominion itself, kind of uh, rubbing up against each other and not always being on
yeah,
the same page, but having that, you know, and the one of the big things that happens at the end of season 6 is bringing the Romulans into the war through In Pale Moonlight and some of those other episodes, and how that's not always a natural fit felt like something that had to get explored and paid off, and
yeah.
Shadows and Devils definitely I think does that. Cool. Well, let's. I'm going to keep it rolling actually, but we're going to lump some of these together. Some of the more lighthearted efforts
Okay.
this season. There's a few of them. It feels almost like they made sure in season 7 to throw in a few that reminds the audience that Deep Space Nine can be a fun show too. It has a sense of humor. It can have levity. It doesn't all have to be, you know, wartime sorrows and death and destruction and horrible things happening. So I guess the first one naturally would be Take Me Out to the Holosuite on that front. How do you feel about this one?
I love this. You said it, Bill. I think they do a decent job of sprinkling in some lighthearted stuff. Because there's some really they tackle some really tough topics in this season, and so just sprinkling in just like a holodeck type of episode, but kind of like a feel good type of episode. I think it just makes for a beautifully, I don't even know how to, just constructed season, where there's you get a mixed bag of some really dark and tough things to watch, and some tears maybe come down, but also there's some great laughs and stuff. So I Take Me Out to Holosuite is a definite see it for me.
Does some cool stuff for Cisco's character too. Actually, like it's got some substance to it. It gets into his prideful streak and it explores some flaws that he has to battle for himself and some substance to it as well. I think that gives it some it's a fun time. Which is especially in the show this thing like the same thing else out. Everything else going on. I like that for Cisco's character as well.
Yeah, I think we're all having trouble hearing you, Bill. Just maybe try to reiterate that. I'm not sure what. That was on my end for some reason, but Bill's passing through an ion storm currently.
Okay, we are back, I think.
Ion Storm has passed.
Ion Storm has passed. We're going to try to edit this and cut out the nonsense. But I appreciate anybody out there who might have bared with us through that. And hopefully we'll be issue free for the next little bit. So we just talked about Take Me Out to the Holosuite. The next episode I was trying to ask about was the Emperor's New Cloak, as a sort of piece of lighter fare, mirror universe, nothing too heavy happening in terms of the grand war storyline and all. I know you have some mixed feelings about the mirror universe as a whole. How do you feel about the ending of that story?
Man, this is one of those ones that's tough because it's tough because I'm not the biggest fan of the mirror universe stuff. But it's also like it's the ending of the mirror universe.
Yep, right.
I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go skip it. I just I am not the biggest fan of mirror universe stuff, and I know there's some things that maybe make sense. I feel like a Ferengi would try to do some business with the mirror universe and stuff, but I just think that there's so much going on with the war and all that stuff and other things we could be doing. And there's some other episodes that kind of fall in that line as well, but I'm gonna go with skip it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that. I think you've skipped. We'd have to go back and look at like these old graphics for the other seasons, but I want to say over the last couple of seasons, the mirror universe ones, you've tended to say skip it. Cyber Honey says she likes the Emperor's New Cloak. Every episode's God's fans. It's definitely it's something I think we've both learned throughout this Trek Live journey and connecting with people out there. It's an interesting one for me. You know, I would have the same mixed feelings with it's ending a big component of the Deep Space Nine story as a whole. That's kind of been a through line through most of the seasons. But I do think it kind of tapped out by this point for me, for my money. Then I think one that I'd be surprised if you don't go the opposite direction on another lighter episode is Bada Bang, Bada Bing. Or Bada Bing, Bada Bang.
So good.
Whichever one you want to call it. Yeah. How do you
feel about good. Another great holodeck episode. It's just plays the some great heist movies back in the day.
Yeah.
That whole just adding that. I'm not sure when it officially got added, but that whole Vegas storyline component to the show, I think it's fantastic. I think it's really well done. I think it's when I think about the uses, the goods, the bads, the uglies of the uses of holodecks, you think it would this is a perfect use for it, right? This crew is in the middle of a war, some tough stuff. I think it's just perfect timing. Couldn't have a better episode, I think, right in this season, just because kind of mid to latter half of the season, it's the war is long. It's been long and tiring, and it's just perfect placement, perfect episode. And they dress up and they look good. All of them do. So, yeah, definitely a see it for me.
Yeah, I love the placement of it being right at the end of sort of the standalone episodes to have a breath of fresh air before we really dive into the nitty-gritty of wrapping up all the serialized elements in the war and all that, all the big storyline stuff. Having a real fun outing. That I think does kind of feel a little bit like a companion piece to Take Me Out to the Holosuite. I think both of those episodes are lighter fare, Holosuite, costume kinds of stuff like baseball, Vegas, like out of character, having to embrace that element of the holodeck, recreational dress up kind of stuff. But they both kind of dive into some Cisco stuff and get into his psyche a little bit. They both offer a little substance for his character especially. In some similar ways. So, good companion pieces there. I think they go well together and do a lot to, like kind of said earlier, balance out some of the heaviness of season 7. Let's do the big Klingon episode of the season, Once More Under the Breach. There's some big Klingon stuff that comes late in season 7 within that episode at the end. But that's sort of Kor's swan song, touching back to Blood Oath and the Sword of Kalas, where he's previously appeared, and obviously Errand of Mercy back to the original series. This is an old school Klingon, dealing with the Klingon at the end of his life. What do you think?
It goes through some interesting places that I wouldn't expect he's almost become like a martyr or like I don't know, maybe that's a strong word, but he becomes a not like a legend or anything like that. It's embarrassing. There's some uncomfortable moments for sure. But in the end he goes out in a blaze of glory, like I think any Klingon would want to go. So it's definitely a see it for me, but I'm not just going to write this episode off as just a blaze of glory episode. It kind of is at the end, but there's some interesting kind of things they explore in this episode with older Klingons and how newer, younger Klingons view older Klingons and stuff. But it also plays with him wanting to be useful and him still wanting to be a warrior, and it's really good. It's really good.
Yep.
Big see it for me.
Yeah, I love it. I just watched it not too long ago, last week, and it always kind of catches me off guard. I think I would sometimes forget how good it is, and how much of, like you said, how much it really embraces that uncomfortable, awkward. It doesn't shy away from some tough moments for Kor, at the end of his life, and dealing with some insecurities and failing faculties and all that stuff. But I think it's very Klingon, the way that they send him off, and I think it's a fitting ending for him. There's a couple of Odo episodes that stand out to me, although one of them is kind of a two-hander. There's some Odo, there's some O'Brien and Nog. But Treachery, Faith, and the Great River is the first one. Half of that story is certainly Odo and Weyoun, a defecting Weyoun. At least one version of Weyoun. How do you feel about that one, first off?
I think it's a great episode. I think both are really good. I like the character development with Nog. I think the Nog character has always been, at least since he's gone the Starfleet route, he's always tried to, he's always looked at his Ferengi side as maybe like a not so positive thing. But this episode, he uses it to it's a strength, and I really appreciate that, because I think there's a stigma that comes with the Ferengi, and in my headcanon, I feel like he had to work through some of those things at the Academy too, and so I think this is just cool to see, to use his Ferengi background, where some people might see as a negative, he uses it as a positive. The Odo stuff is interesting because I don't know, it just adds another wrinkle to the Wayne character that we get to explore with the clones and how every clone is a little bit different. And Wayne 6, Wayne 7, Wayne 8, whatever the case, they all feel a little bit different. I think that's just cool to see Jeffrey Combs just try to alter that character just a little bit to feel a little bit. I just think that's amazing. And just cool sci-fi concept that I think is awesome too. So yeah, I dig it. It's to see it for me.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I love both sides of it. I think everything you said about Jeffrey Combs' performance in it is true, and I couldn't agree more. I think it does some cool things with forcing Odo to explore his own his discomfort with the way that the Dominion sees him, and how characters like the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar see a changeling, his discomfort with being looked at as a god, and that's all very much on the forefront in this episode. And then, of course, like you said, the Chief O'Brien, Nog, particularly Nog, his development and learning a little bit more about the Ferengi philosophy.
Yeah.
In a non-Quark kind of way, like kind of getting out of Quark's headspace and seeing a different side to the way the Ferengi operate, and their philosophy, and having it benefit Starfleet and Chief O'Brien, pretty cool. And
and it makes sense too, because you think there'd be supply chain issues with the war going on, so it fits right in. I think
it does. Yeah, there's a realness to it that is really pretty great. So that's up there as one of my favorites of the season for sure. The other Odo episode that kind of sticks out to me pre-run of Last 10 would be Chimera, with the other changeling castaway kind of finding his way to Odo, played by J.G. Hertzler, who's Martok, which is an interesting, very different kind of a character for that actor to play. How do you feel about this? I don't think we've talked about this episode at all. I have no idea what you thought of it.
I think it's a missed opportunity. I think it's for me at least, maybe middle of the road episode. It's a see it, because I think it's pivotal to Odo's backstory. But I think it would have been cool to be able to. I know that it's kind of impossible because the Dominion sent, seeds all over the universe, pretty much, and so it's odd that we would maybe run into another one, but maybe it makes sense a little bit. But the interesting thing that I'm thinking of, and I was thinking, did they join? I can't remember if they did or not.
It's a good question.
Because that means, would Odo pass the sickness onto him?
If he did, yeah.
And so,
if they joined,
and so, and he didn't. I don't know if he returned to the. So I don't know if he might die. So that's I don't know, maybe a little headcanon stuff. But no, I feel like this could have been missed opportunity for more. And it's also another one of those episodes where I said see it, right?
Yeah,
it's
you did say see it. Okay.
Because it's another one of these episodes where it forces Odo to look at what it means to be solid and what it means to be a changeling.
Right.
And I think that's just it's necessary for that Odo character and development, because I think this helps tee up his decision
exactly
at the end of the show. So
right. That's the thing.
It's to see it from me.
Things in Treachery, Faith, and the Great River and Chimera, I think, do most of the heavy lifting from the early part of the season to tee up what he chooses at the end. I think with Treachery, Faith, and the Great River, hearing the other Wayuns, like the defector Wayun clone, talk about what Odo could bring to the Founders about living with solids, and that to kind of curb some of that fear, and all those things are in his head, and then having this experience with the other shapeshifter and being tempted to go off and have adventures with this other changeling, and like these things do, I think, build up.
Look for other changelings. Yeah,
exactly. So I think they do serve a purpose, both of them, on that front, and I would agree with you. I think it makes it makes it hard to skip it. I guess I'll say that. We have a couple more Ezri episodes that kind of stick out to me. Prodigal Daughter, which is kind of an oddball one. It's an Ezri story, like an Ezri origin with her family, but it's also kind of a sequel to Honor Among Thieves, the Chief O'Brien.
Yeah, with O'Brien. Yeah.
Stuff. Kind of does both of those things at one time, and then Field of Fire is also kind of the last standalone Ezri Dax episode before we get into the serialized ending. So I'm curious about those two. To kind of wrap
both C's for me.
Okay.
I'll start with Prodigal Daughter. I think it's a good attempt at getting some backstory with the Ezri character. I think like the O'Brien stuff, like it just happens to be on Ezri's home planet, so I find that interesting. But there's some good stuff with I guess it's not the Emerald Chain, it's the Syndicate too.
The Orion Syndicate.
Yeah, the Orion Syndicate, which feels dangerous again. I feel like I really like that. But I think it's a decent kind of Ezri backstory that I think is necessary to know about the character. So you gotta watch it. Field of Fire is also a see it for me. It's the whodunit one. I really like that. It feels a little bit film noir-y, or trying to track down a killer, which I really like. And also, it's building on the backstory and working with one of Dax's previous hosts, which is always an interesting kind of concept too. It's scary. It's I know people don't think Field of Fire is like a war story, but in my headcanon that Vulcan is I don't know, because of the war and what's going on. It's a tough topic to handle in this season. That they go to some dark places, and this is one of those episodes where it is a little bit unnerving about what transpires. But I think it's a good Dax backstory type of episode, so we need it, and it's good for my money. So see it.
I agree with you. There's elements of Field of Fire that are pretty scary. That weapon that allows you to basically beam a bullet into another room, and it's pretty freaky. I do like the film noir elements there. That's one of the notes that I think Deep Space Nine is really comfortable playing with, and that's a good episode for that. Prodigal Daughter, there's some mixed opinion in the chat. Cyber Honey says it's a skip it for her, but she loves Field of Fire. Cyber Honey says if Prodigal Daughter was a season 1 episode, would have made more sense, but barely got to know Ezri, so timing fell off for her. Like if it was more of a beginning of the show, I guess less in the mix with such wrap up.
But she was introduced in the last season, so
true.
It's tough.
That's why I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think that's probably why it has like that season 1 kind of a vibe, because it has that like getting to know you character personality that other season 1 episodes kind of have, and for Ezri it is season 1, I guess, right? So
yeah.
Cool. So we have a few left. Let's do the Dr. Bashir ones. We have Chrysalis, which is a sequel to Statistical Probabilities, the genetically enhanced humans that Bashir kind of connects with. He tries to cure. What's her name? What's the female character's name?
Yeah, I forget. But
yeah. What do you think?
I think it's a skip it for me. The problem is, and prove me wrong if I'm wrong, but I don't like trying to shoehorn in a love interest. I know it's not just like trying to shoehorn it, kind of, because it's from Bashir's past, but it's like Same thing with Kira. Like, why do we have to try to, at least before Odo, like, just have a love interest of the season? So it's a skip it for me.
Yeah, the ramp up to a romance definitely kind of always feels false to me. That feels sort of sudden and out of nowhere. Yeah, and I think Bashir can be a little. He has some moments that feel kind of false to me, maybe a little out of character.
Falls in love really quickly, yeah.
Very quickly, which I guess he's been one to do on occasion, but I don't know. I think part of the struggles with the Bashir character for me is, after the reveal of the genetic enhancement, it does kind of feel like they shifted the foundation a little bit on him, and things that might have felt more natural earlier in the show feel less natural now. And how does it all fit in my head? Like I get confused in my own experience with him at times at this point of the show, and that episode's an example of that. I think on the other side of the coin, for me at least, is Inner Arma and Silent Legis, which is
so good, all timer. See it.
See it.
Okay. Yeah, it's it's really good. Section 31 stuff. There's some Section 31 stuff going on later in the season, but this is really good. Deep Space Nine, I think, does a pretty good job of Section 31 stuff type of episodes. So yeah, it's a see it for me. It's it really sets the groundwork for more other Section 31 stuff. But yeah, it's really good, and it's very necessary for this whole arc, this whole thing. That's one of those puzzle pieces that has to fit to get all these others to fit. So, yeah, and it's very successful at feeling. I don't know. It's successful at that. Being very mysterious and seeing 3 moves ahead of it's just it's really good. It's really good. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I think it asks tough questions. I love the scene at the end with Bashir and Admiral Ross taking the badges off and having a real conversation off the record, outside of rank, about the rules of war and what's okay and what's not, and what's known and what's not, and there's some really great dialogue there. It's really dense and richly written. Like, I feel like it's one of those episodes that you could like watch and then immediately end up wanting to watch again just to like absorb the twists and turns and the layers of the dialogue, and to see things coming. It's a good one. It's a really upper tier Deep Space Nine episode for me. It's one of Bashir's best episodes, I think, and I think it might be my favorite. Like, it's probably the high point of Section 31 for me. Like, even better than like Inquisition last season 6, with the introduction of it. Like, this is the thing that really like puts it out there and gives it all its kind of scary qualities and all the moral ambiguity about it. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Is it in between? All the gray area is in a package deal in this episode, teeing up things that it's gonna, bring to bear in this last run of episodes we're about to talk about.
Real quick, I like the pairing with Bashir because I see a lot of people say, like, or even in the episodes, like, oh, he's a perfect candidate because he's genetically enhanced. But for me, I think it's perfect because he's still a younger, I think, right? He's still a younger officer fresh out of the academy, where he still has those ideals that maybe not an older officer might have.
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfect pairing. So he's still idealistic with the even going through the war stuff. So yeah, great episode.
Agreed. I think we should talk about the Siege of Ar558 and It's Only a Paper Moon as kind of a package deal because they connect so directly. Yeah. They're very, very, very different episodes of Star Trek. They're about different things. They have different tones. but
Yeah.
they're so linked story-wise that I think they kind of have to go hand in hand. What do you think of the Siege of AR558 as sort of the boots on the ground ultimate war episode of Star Trek? Maybe?
It's so good, but it's definitely not one of those things you pop on a Saturday night and want to just have a lighter episode. It tackles a lot of tough stuff from war, and it kind of bleeds into It's Only a Paper Moon. But no, I think it gives a lot of the cast. The cast has a lot to do. Quark is there for some reason, and he gives this great speech, and he's only there to give that speech. I don't think they would have let civilians go to the front lines, but yeah, it's interesting because we don't get a lot of this frontline stuff, but when we do, it's really powerful, and they do a really good job, and you really see not just in what happens to Nog, but in these background characters that are just so, I think, do a fantastic job of depicting the tough things about war and being on the front lines. And it's easy to sit in an ivory tower, i.e. the station, and think that there's a war going on. But when you're really like boots on the ground, you're on the planet, you're trying to, you're holding this, whatever it is, the intelligence relayers, whatever it is that they're trying to hold from the Dominion. You really get a peek behind the curtain of what goes on and what it means to be a Starfleet officer serving in this area. Because I don't know if they really get into it, but do they recall the exploration ships to come and try to, and some of these people could be just scientists and surveying, but because of the war, they get pulled into some stuff that's tough to watch. But yeah, great episode. Paper Moon, man, that's tearjerker for sure. I talked about the positives and negatives and benefits and of the holodeck, and we get to see a positive, I think, here, and helps you work through some stuff that you've gone through, and it's man, it's a very, very tough topic that they kind of tackle here, which is just blows my mind that they did that on live TV. So it's just very good. Both very good. Both see it.
Yeah, I think they take a really mature and nuanced approach to the PTSD, depression, storyline, and putting a character through their paces.
Yeah.
And Star Trek is so famous or infamous for like injuring a character and then they kind of just recover off screen and nothing's ever explored about it.
Or red shirts.
Or red shirts, yeah. Characters like that get killed or get maimed and you kind of never see
thrown
them
away.
again.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
They're there as a plot device, and having it be one of our, kind of beloved characters, and having to sit with them and watch them process the loss and the injury and the trauma is, not always there in Star Trek, and when it is, it's jarring and kind of it's a high point of Deep Space Nine for me.
Yeah, it's just really good. I'll echo whatever all of it what you said. It's definitely not. It's nice to see them, but it's also tough to work through that stuff. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's good.
Our last one before we get into the last 10 is Covenant. And I kind of left that for last because that does sort of so directly, a lot of these episodes do, but that really directly plays into some of the stuff that happens within this last 10 episode arc, with not really Gull anymore, Dukat is mentally, what he's up to.
Yeah.
Pa-rate stuff. It works as an independent standalone as well, but it really does tee up a lot of what's coming. How do you feel about Covenant? I just watched this last night, so
it's a see it. This is one of those episodes where I feel like I want to skip it, but it's a see it because of what it
You
tees
kind of
up.
need it. Yeah.
You kind of need it. I'll explain a little. I do not really enjoy the power race stuff, that storyline at all. But um, to Deep Space Nine's credit, it feels like, at least for me, where what I get from Dukat is like it's true to the character. He's power hungry, yes, all these things. He wants people to love him, but I think his trauma and what he went through, he would definitely fall into worship this mythical, demonized, whatever mumbo jumbo you want to call it.
Right.
So it makes sense for the character and what he's gone through, but just some of it and some stuff in the episodes is a little scary and a little uncomfortable. And I don't really enjoy the power right stuff, but it is in fact to see it for me. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of mixed feelings about this one. Cyber Honey mentions it's a skip it for her, but she loves Kieran Dukat episodes, just not this one. Like even folks who kind of like that dynamic and like those two characters, you know, foiling each other's plans. It's a tough one. I have mixed feelings on it myself. I think it does explore some real life ish with cult behavior and how people get wrapped up in that, and some dangerous real world things are definitely on display there. There's some unexpected twists that play out that are scary and alarming, and in true to character, I think, for Dukat especially. Like I have no problem seeing Dukat do some of the things he does in this. He's very much on point, but it's not a pleasant watch for me at all. Like it's a tough sit, and it's pretty brutal. But like you said, I echo everything you said, that it is essential for everything it tees up coming later on. So all you have left are these last 10, and I think we kind of have to look at this maybe as a whole. You know,
I can't. I don't think I can do a skip it on any of these.
Right.
But there's some episodes that I want to talk about though that I could maybe swing the other way. But
take it away.
I think they do a good job. Once everything gets going to really bounce around in a lot of places, and it feels like there's so many things going on. But man, I think the first three I have the most trouble with. I'm not sold on the marriage stuff with Cisco and Yates. There's some trouble I have with that. And then again, this is more power race stuff, which I cannot stand. Like Strange Bedfellows, I want to put a skip in on it, but because I'm pretty sure that's when the Breen come in and we get some good Breen stuff. So I have to have that episode. But everything else in that episode is so frustrating, with the Kai and with Dukat disguised as some farmer or something like that comes through. It's just it's so, can't stand it. But once it gets going, I mean, it's hard to stop. Once you finish this episode, you just want to press play because it doesn't stay with just the Dominion stuff. There's great stuff with O'Brien and Bashir trying to help Odo cure this. Like, there's so much going on that it's very well, very well done. At least and maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I have some stuff with the last episode as well that I'm not happy with. But man, this in the middle, it's just, I mean, it's rolling, and
well, it's like, it might even merit there's probably a way to have a Trek Live episode just on these 10 episodes, because there's so many. You'd have to can analyze them, and because there's so many sub stories that are playing out. You know, you have the Worf and Ezri resolutions kind of coming to bear. Like you said, Cisco and Cassidy is a major thing. All the stuff with the Dominion. It's not even just like the Breen are coming. It's in Strange Bedfellows. Yeah. Oh yeah, but even in Strange Bedfellows, like some of the stuff with the Breen coming, it's you need that to get to where Damar gets to where he gets. Like some of the
yeah.
Go ahead.
Damar might have one of the best arcs of the season.
He's amazing.
I mean, he starts as a booze, but like he's just like this man, just troubled. I'll try to frame it a little better. Troubled officer that's just fed up with everything and is turning to substance, which is never a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
But then he just man, it's he helps Ezri and Worf escape, and then you bring in the Kira element, and we're bringing this thing full circle with a Bajoran helping become a resistance cell. It's just
it's great.
That is so good. It's so good. This is and it's in some of these are just Trek at its best, and this is just foreshadowing to what we get to see in season 3 of Enterprise, and even in Discovery we get that too. This is so before its time. It's so awesome to see. So yeah, it's really good, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and they got it's nice to see a show wrap up some things 10 episodes before and not the last episode. Right. All good stuff.
All great stuff. That's the thing. Like it's so hard to boil down. Even like favorite things. Like there are moments in here that are so good. Like the Damar's speech at the end of The Changing Face of Evil when he does break away and like he announces resist today, resist tomorrow. That whole speech, and he blows up the Vorta cloning station, and Wayne is like he did that on purpose. He knows exactly what he was doing. It's so good. And the Breen blowing up the Defiant feels like a big moment. You know, that's big. That's a major event in that show that I think is really well played. There's great Klingon stuff with Galron kind of nuts and needing to be pulled back and tacking into the wind deals with that a lot with the Worf challenging him and giving the chancellorship to Martok, and that's like the way that plays out is really, I think, well handled and gives Galron like a fitting ending too. Like it makes sense. Like to see a council, like if you think about it, Galron's one of the characters kind of like Worf who spans the Next Generation into Deep Space Nine. We saw his entire sort of reign as Chancellor. We saw him become the Chancellor in like the middle of the Next Generation, and we see him.
But he was at that point. He was a politician. Now he wasn't just the. It's just so good the way that they play that.
For sure. Another big thing. Obviously, they're wrapping up all kinds of things here. But in the Dogs of War, Zek steps down, and the new Grand Nagus is not Quark but Rom. That's an unexpected twist in a lot of ways, but kind of perfect, I think. In others, it makes sense. I think take or leave your opinion of the Zek and Moogie relationship, but not a big surprise that Moogie would push for Rom and not Quark, or maybe Rom over anybody to be a new kind of Nagus and to try to bring some change to the Ferengi society. How'd you feel about the way that played out? Like just the wrap up of the Ferengi.
I did. I thought it was a decent way to do it. I think, and they talked about it in the episode. Quark has the old views, and these the Ferenginar is changing, so they got to have a more progressive, blue collar type of leader. And I think that's wrong. I mean, he didn't really go the business route. He went something that he enjoys, with which they kind of pull back a little bit just because there's so much going on. But he was an engineer. He's just kind of a blue collar guy. He's just an everyday guy, and I think it's perfect for
Who doesn't buy into the old way of doing things, like you said. Another major storyline here, like you kind of mentioned, part of the stuff that comes from Kira being with the Cardassians, with Odo fighting the Resistance, is this disease that the changelings are suffering from, and the reveal that was Section 31 who did that. That Section 31 is trying to wipe out the changelings. Like there's a desperation move there. How do you feel about that? Do you
There's been some other episodes and other shows that kind of tackle something similar with like the Borg and stuff, but I think it's another good use of Section 31 to have this moral joust with Bashir, which he does, obviously, which is always great. But yeah, it would make sense. Starfleet would never be about it. They would never do that. But there's some things that happen in this season that they talk about the rules of war and what happens in war. We deal with it with the Romulans and like the hospital and stuff, and that's and on the Dominion side as well. Like what rules of war they start to commit genocide like against the Cardassian people. Like this, it's just another one of those topics that just make you realize war is a terrible thing. So, but there are some great moments with some Section 31 stuff. An interesting sci-fi concept to go into the dying mind of Sloane's, or whatever his name is. Sloane's. I really do love that. I know some people can maybe take or leave that, but I like that. I think that's kind of a fun little interesting, which you've done before, like away missions into someone else's brain or mind. I think that's cool. And I always wonder what that office scene is so cool. Just be like, them looking at all these things, and I really do love that.
It kind of serves as like the last hurrah for the O'Brien and Bashir pairing too. It's kind of like their last adventure together as a duo. Which I think is needed. I think that's an important thing to hit one more note on at the end of the show, to make sure you give that one more spin. The two of them together on a mission or doing something together. I think we should just get into the finale as a whole, like, and anything that kind of comes from that. I'm curious to hear, how do you think the show ended? What worked? What didn't? You kind of mentioned earlier you have some mixed feelings on some of the directions that they went. What are some strengths and weaknesses with the finale, and then maybe as an extension of that, the way the show ended as a whole, because some of those things are not just the finale's work. That's the thing with these 10 episodes, is it's all kind of a big long
culmination. It's almost one episode, really. No, I think it ties up probably 75% of what happens pretty well. I think they tie up the Dominion stuff pretty well. I think I love that Odo's the one to create the ceasefire. I love that. I love, because they always say like, oh, it's gonna take a lot to get to Cardassia, and then we actually get to see that. We actually get to see there's some great space battles in that too. I mean, there's some great stuff with on the Cardassian side, like with Garrick, and there's some great stuff with that.
Garrick being back on Cardassia is a big deal.
Yeah,
just the fact that he's even there.
And again, it puts it into perspective when he talks, because he saw how great Cardassia was, and I feel like he's always loved it so much. I think if there's no truer patriot maybe that I would point towards, maybe a few other Cardassians, but he's just I like that ending as well. I like Kira taking Odo to dropping Odo off. I do like that ending. That feels like something they would do. As much as my cheeseball wants them to stay together forever, that makes sense. I think everything ties up pretty well, ends pretty well, except one major thing, and that's I talked about it with Bedfellows. It's the Paul Rate stuff that just feels. I know we have like an hour and 30 minutes, but there's a lot to tie up. Even though we tied up a lot of it in these 10 episodes, but the Paul Rate stuff really feels shoehorned in. It feels so quick and bang bang, like they're on Cardassia, then they're back on the station, and then there's something that I gotta go tend to, and then Cisco's already on Major and in the fire caves, and yeah, that just feels shoehorned into me. And then I have no issue with Cisco like going and spending his time and going to the Celestial Temple and being with the prophets. I have no issue with that. But my biggest issue is he didn't really get to say goodbye or have a proper goodbye with Jake. And I know Jake wasn't really in this season a whole heck of a lot, and I know that they kind of made their bed and now they have to lie on it because when Cisco and sorry, I'm going a long tangent, but when Cisco and Yates are going to get married, they warned that there would be sorrow. Well, yeah, you didn't get to say goodbye to your son. That's my sorrow, not sorrow because you're leaving your wife. It's just like the Cisco character was built on that from the very, very first episode. Was built on that father-son relationship and how much it meant to him, and about how home wasn't where they grew up; it was where they were together, and that built and built and built, and then it just felt so flat at the end. It's frustrating because I'm not sure why they did it, because I feel like Cisco has such a great relationship with all the cast and crew, and to just say and just to do through Cassidy, it's just frustrating, and I think a misstep. And if I was watching this and I was frustrated, I was frustrated this time. But if first run, if I'm watching it live, I would have been pissed. Like it's just the whole culmination of the Paul Ray stuff and Cisco's like being the emissary kind of wrap up felt a little clunky and frustrating. So that's my long-winded answer of what you leave behind.
I had never really thought of this before until you kind of mentioned it to me. And I totally agree that I think it would have been greatly strengthened by whether it's instead of a moment with Cassidy, because like the scene you're talking about where he has that moment with Cassidy in the Celestial Temple to kind of send a message back to everybody, hey, I'm here, I'm okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll be back in a year, maybe it'll be yesterday, that whole thing, who knows, time,
yeah.
It's not linear. Whether it's in addition to that, a scene with Jake, or maybe he has that conversation with both of them and he has a moment with Jake to kind of tie up that relationship, because I do agree with you. I think the sort of foundational principle that sets Benjamin Sisko apart right from the get-go is that he's a single father, like as a lead character in a Star Trek show. Like that to me is like the most defining quality that gives him that three-dimensionality, something distinctive and unique, a widower and a single father. And, it's so all over Avery Brooks' performance every time he has a moment with Jake that's what I think Avery Brooks gravitated to the most. I think his performance demonstrates that in every moment with Jake. So to kind of leave us without putting a cap on that relationship is unfortunate. And I think that would have given it some additional power, like having... It's not even like, because the very last image of the show is Odo and Jake looking out at the wormhole. Presumably, Sisko's in the wormhole, Odo's on the other side of the wormhole. They're looking out together, thinking of the people that they left behind. as the camera pulls out on Deep Space Nine. So, but it's not even like both of those characters didn't have a goodbye with that character. Kira had a long goodbye with Odo. Like you said, she drops him off, and they have a moment. So Jake should have had an opportunity, I think, to have that goodbye with Ben Sisko. I agree with you. I think that's something I wish was there too. Even though it wasn't on my mind in 1999, it hasn't been something that has kind of stood out to me over the years. But when I heard you talk about it, and I know your perspective on it for, layers upon layers of reasons why that would be important to you, that is kind of inarguable. I think that's kind of a missing piece.
I just think it's more true to the character, and I'm not gonna play who knows the character best, but from where I'm sitting and from where I'm watching, I think Jake is more of a foundational character in Sisko's life than Cassidy. Mm-hmm. Or just bring them both. Just bring them both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I because, like you said, they
can't do
such
about it now, but
yeah, they can't. It's 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah,
that ship sailed. But I think the show, I think, wraps up. I'm in the midst of it. I'm in the middle of season 7 right now with my own watch. But my takeaway has always been that for the vast majority of it, I feel like it does wrap up really well. I think in that 10 episode arc, and even before then, in some of these standalone episodes, they do so much heavy lifting with these characters and paying off these storylines that it is a satisfying experience. And I think that's where a lot of the, you poll a lot of Star Trek fans, what's the best Star Trek show? Not your favorite, maybe. What's the best Star Trek show? And a lot of people will say Deep Space Nine. And I think these kinds of payoffs.
I can confidently say that. Yeah.
Yeah, you would agree with that, you think?
I can confidently say that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, because it has those payoffs. And kind of like you were alluding to, you said that this felt like it had its eye on the ball to pay off things and to wrap up storylines ahead of where some of those other shows maybe did. TNG's kind of an anomaly. TNG knew that they had movies coming. They couldn't, with All Good Things, the challenge of All Good Things is to make it final, but not final. Like, it's got to feel like a final episode and a big deal to wrap up the TV show, but Star Trek Generations is coming out in 6 months, so we can't do anything too lasting to these characters. You can't send Captain Picard to a celestial temple where who knows where he'll come back. Like, he's in a movie on the Enterprise in 6 months. So they couldn't do big swings with changing the characters too much. This they could, and they had their eye on it early, and they did it. And as I think you've mentioned before, on and offline, on and off the show, like wrapping up a show is hard, and a lot of shows.
Yeah, I understand that. Mm-hmm. The majority of shows are not successful, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So it's to get close is to Deep Space Nine's credit. So
yeah. But we're going to talk more about this. I think there's a lot left on the bone for Deep Space Nine. I don't want to. We've kind of already done this, I think, because we're both watching Deep Space Nine until just now with you finishing it. We've done a lot of Deep Space Nine topics on Trek Live over the last several months,
which we're sorry about.
Yeah, no, I think people are digging it. I think people that I've talked to and people in the chat, I'm seeing echoing sentiments that Deep Space Nine is like Jimmy 77's favorite. I'm sure people like the Deep Space Nine conversations, but I do want to mix it up. But there are some things about Deep Space Nine that I'd love to explore. I'd love to talk about Ezri, like we've talked about before, as kind of teeing up. Maybe we're going to do that down the road. I'd like to look at these 10 episodes at the end, maybe as their own thing. With a more concise, like, this is what we're talking about at some point down the road, looking at the different story threads and what we think really works, what we don't, and then there's just so much. And that's the beauty of Trek Live, is as long as we're doing this, we don't feel hamstrung into talking about one show or the other. It's not an episode by episode companion piece. We kind of talk about whatever we feel like. So we're going to be doubling back Deep Space Nine, I'm sure, down the road. So cool. All right, I think that'll about do it. I think we're going to be off next week one more time. Maybe not one more time. We have a lot of holiday stuff coming up, but next week's going to be either a week off, or I may pop on and do something solo. At some point over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do that to kind of do a rewatch recap of my own and grade some episodes and I did one of those about 6 months ago. I'm going to do that again. But we will be back in 2 weeks, and we're going to do a rewatch debrief. I'm basically going to interview you, Dan, on your entire experience with rewatching all of these shows over the last couple of years, and I'm curious to see, what opinions have changed, what was validated and the same from your first experience with all these shows, and favorite this and that. You're gonna get bombarded with questions that some of which you probably won't want to answer, but
a mission debrief.
Yeah.
Bill talked about the top of the show. Deep Space Nine was actually my last show that I've been including in my rewatch. I don't include the new stuff really in my rewatch or series in my rewatch. So I have just completed one of those rewatch missions, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, Bill's gonna do a little mission debrief, and then maybe I'll talk about what my next mission's gonna look like. So
yeah. A lot of things to tackle. We have some good topics to come before the end of the year. We'll take a little hiatus around Christmas. We'll be off for a few weeks there, and be back in early 2022. But in the meantime, we have some good stuff to come through November and the early part of December. So stay tuned.
Yep. Thanks everybody for watching. You know the drill. The discussion does not stop here. Twitter and our Discord server are the best two places to keep the discussion going. With that being said, thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yep. Thanks everybody.